Hi folks, this is going to be a video response to a few comments made by Richard Brooke. Hello Richard, if you're watching. I'll just read your comments, Richard, so everybody kind of gets the context of what I'm going to talk about. So a couple of weeks ago you said in one of my videos, does anything make sense to anyone? Because I'm buggered if I know what's going on. Then in another one you said, and the point is what? What is the point? If I could get the point, I might have a clue, but the point escapes me. And then the last one. Anyway, I was doing the 14-hour day malarkey to get with the work ethic. That didn't work, so I logged on to the metaphysical stuff. That didn't work either. Must have missed something as usual. Yeah, you're really talking about the subject of purpose or ultimate meaning, and you're putting it in the context of time, and that right there is the problem, because every question that anyone could ask about meaning, you should always have in the back of your mind the inevitability of the heat death of the universe. Right? That's what's coming. There doesn't seem to be any serious doubt scientifically that that's going to happen one day, and if it's not that, it's going to be the big crunch. But the idea of the steady state universe that never had a beginning and will never have an end, that doesn't seem to be on the cards anymore. The Greeks could accept that, but the old Greeks in 2,000 years ago or more, because they looked up at the night sky and they saw essentially something that was moving, yes, but it was the same every night. You know, the stars just kept coming back around again. So it made sense to them to have a steady state universe theory. But we now know about the cosmic microwave background radiation, which gives us a sense that everything had an origin in a singularity. And we know about energy, and we know about entropy. We know that everything in a closed system tends towards disorder, right? So eventually everything's going to even itself out towards complete thermodynamic equilibrium. Okay? This all ends. The entire universe ends. So anyway, 13.7 billion years into the universe's existence, there are humans. And humans, once they arrive on the scene, they go, I want to last. I want to last forever, okay? I want to have an afterlife if I die. I can't believe that it all just amounts to nothing. But, you know, the problem of death, the problem of something ending, if it's even a problem, but we tend to think it is, don't we? That problem is not something unique to the human race. That is something that is in the very fabric of the universe itself. And when you think about it like that, doesn't it seem a little bit silly that a human being is clinging to some kind of eternal permanence when no other structure in the entire universe, including the universe, has eternal permanence? So that might give us a clue that the idea of railing against death and being frustrated by futility, because that's the problem right there, isn't it? Futility. We must be looking at it all wrong. I mean, are we going to look at the whole universe and say, okay, universe, I know I'm kind of 13.7 billion years late in getting here, but you're wrong, universe. You shouldn't be doing it this way. It should be another way, a way that allows me to stay alive forever, so that the things that I do can actually mean something in the sense that they last. You see how kind of crazy it starts to sound when you put it in those terms? Human beings hold life very heavily. I don't know why that is exactly. It might have something to do with the fact that we have a very rich experience of consciousness that allows us to imagine the future and remember the past very richly. So we lose touch with the present, which is where everything actually happens. It's the only place that things happen. I take the view that time is not a real structure in a four-dimensional sense. I take the view that this, what's happening right now, is the only reality. If you could hit a pause button and sort of magically transport your consciousness to any point in the universe while it's paused, that's the only reality. There are no other slices of time as such that actually exist. It's just that the present moment, that ultimate reality, the present moment, is always changing. So if you just unpause it, it starts to change here and it starts to change everywhere else as well. So there's just this. And if you know a little bit about relativity, you might wonder how that fits with relativity. That's a complicated discussion and I've given it some thought. It does fit, I believe, but it would take some explaining and it's a bit superfluous to this discussion anyway. So, futility is the frustration, but it shouldn't be. I remember one of my favorite books in the Bible, one of the first ones that I studied in depth was Ecclesiastes. It's a fascinating book to read, actually, even from the point of view of a non-believer. It's essentially the story of a man who works hard and amasses a good life for himself, but realizes that he has to die and it all ends, and he asks himself, what's it all for? It all just ends. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity and a grasping for the wind. Yes, it is, if you're overly attached to time, if you're overly attached to your own existence. But I'm not attached in that way, so I'm not frustrated. I mean, a human being can look at itself and go, I have value, I matter. But what do we mean by I when we say that? I think it can be useful to actually look at your life, and I look at my life, and all I see is a guy who gets up in the morning, defecates, eats, gets on a vehicle, goes to work so he can earn pennies to live, suffers a number of addictions and has obsessive tendencies and deals with these things and enjoys friendships and watches TV and tries to eat well, but occasionally has moments of decadence, has things that he feels he failed in life and things that he feels that he succeeded in spectacularly. And it's just this mass of, it's just this, I started off as this consciousness stream as an infant that started gobbling up everything around it in terms of, watching what was going on and learning. And I built this personality as this body growed. And all it's doing is just feeding itself and looking around and trying to enjoy itself mostly, trying to minimize the amount of suffering that it experiences and maximize the amount of happiness that it can have. There's nothing very profound about that, and there's nothing that, well, it's profound in the fact that consciousness is an amazing mystery, but do we really need to make it last? Do I need to make this structure that I call the mind of Darryl Sloan last? It's a mess. Why do I want to make this last? If you really examine what you are, I think, you might start seeing it a little bit differently. The question, I have value, that it starts to seem a little bit silly. I'm very much at ease now of the idea that I won't be here forever. I mean, there were fear of death. Why? I'm not talking about fear of dying. Fear of dying is legitimate. Nobody wants to spend a year being eaten alive by cancer, right? I'd like to die quickly when it happens, like my dad did in a road traffic accident in old age. That would be good. I would not like to die like my mother, which was bowel cancer over a period of 1 year. It was horrible for her, and it was horrible for everyone who loved her, including me. But anyway, fear of death, fear of non-being. There was 13.7 billion years of non-being of Darryl Sloan. And then there's this little slice of what we call time. And suddenly this apparent entity, Darryl Sloan, goes, oh no, I have to stay. Why? Other consciousness will be here when Darryl Sloan is gone. And if you can identify consciousness in the abstract sense as your fundamental identity, then you can let go of these action figures, if you like, to use a term coined by Paul Hederman. The action figure, Darryl Sloan. The action figure, Richard Brooke. It's all temporary stuff. Everything's temporary, including the whole universe. So what I'm kind of getting at here is, if you're frustrated by it, it's got to be irrational. Even if you can't see why it's irrational, it's got to be irrational. If you're frustrated by the fact that nothing seems to be going to some kind of ultimate meaning, it can't go to any ultimate meaning. The data is in. The universe is going to end. Nothing can have ultimate meaning since that is so. Right? So you can get frustrated by it, but that's like a human being saying to the universe, why are you like this? Why don't you conform to what I want you to be like so that I can last? You see? So start with the acceptance that nothing lasts. You know, you get people talking about how, yes, we know the sun's going to die one day, but perhaps human beings will make it out into the stars and find a home elsewhere. They're saying that as if the heat death isn't coming. I strongly suspect that human beings will die, probably long before the sun dies, since there was an event that wiped out the dinosaurs, and that's probably the only reason there were human beings in the first place. As the story goes, there were nothing but, little rodents. And the dinosaurs ruled the earth. Along came an asteroid, wiped out the dinosaurs because it changed the atmosphere, or something like that. And larger mammals started to evolve. And here we are. The special mammal, made in the image of God. I know you don't believe that. So, if we can't get to a point, and that's what I'm saying, there's no point in terms of one event leading to another, or in terms of something you have to do to accomplish a goal. All goals end in the heat death of the universe. Right? So it's not about finding a point. The whole premise of that is wrong. So where does that leave us? Well, what I would suggest is, and this may sound a little bit, colorful or poetic, but I think it's very meaningful, and I've used it before. I always come back to the mental picture of a little boy sitting on the beach, building a sandcastle, knowing full well that he can't bring it home in the car with his parents. He has to leave it behind, and knowing full well that the tide will come in and wash it away. Yet he continues to build. When you understand why that child builds the sandcastle, even though he knows it's futile, then you understand everything you could possibly know about the meaning of life. Seriously, it's all contained right there. Think about why the child continues to build. Because it's not serious. It's that simple. He builds because it's giving him pleasure, he likes it, and it's not serious. He doesn't have to cling to it. He just wants to be doing this right now. When now changes, he will want to be doing something else, and he will not cling to the past memory of the sandcastle. Think of the Zen guys. You may have seen this, where they do these big elaborate paintings on the ground using this coloured dust as paint, and as soon as the painting is done, they just erase it. There's something in that this whole idea of non-attachment. I don't take it to any kind of an extreme. I mean, I would like to have a romantic relationship with someone where there's attachment, you know, but not attachment in a way that's very clingy. You know, it's when we cling that, you know, it's okay to have attachments as long as they're not heavy. Yeah. An interesting thing happened in work today. Um, I am responsible for a lot of photography that has happened in my job over the past 18 years that I've been there. So I have this huge big archive of photographs. There is now government legislation in the EU, even though Britain's leaving the EU apparently, right? But anyway, at the minute, we're still in it, and there's this government legislation that forces businesses, including schools, and I work in a school, to erase any photographs of people after you've had them for 2 years. So I have a complete, you know, photographic historical record of the past 18 years of my school's history, and the thought of erasing that, I may have to do that. It's looking like I will, but I had a little bit of a minor epiphany when I thought about that, and I realized that, you know, when were the most fun years of my job? And I realized that it was the first ones, when it was all new, when I didn't have a memory of anything about the place. You see what I'm kind of getting at? Now I have this big memory of the 18 years encased in all these photographs, and I have this sort of attachment to it. When the most pleasure occurred in my job, when I had the least attachment to the past. Isn't that interesting? Something to think about. People talk a lot about the present moment and the now, and sometimes it's profound and sometimes it's not so profound, but it really is the only place where life happens. The past is useful because we've got to remember stuff that impacts our present. Like I got to remember how to drive, for instance. The future is also useful as a hypothetical thing that we imagine, because it allows us to steer our course in the present to bring about good consequences and avoid detrimental ones. But beyond this, there's no value to the past and the future. And we tend to have a very heavy attachment to these things instead of just living spontaneously right now and not getting attached, not getting clingy about keeping anything, because you just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate for no reason. Whether it's memories or whether it's toys or whether it's, you know, some other physical thing. There's no point in any kind of real accumulation, because you're far better to ride the wave of the present moment and keep your attention on that and your enjoyment on that. I tend to wallow in nostalgia. You know, I'm wearing a Sinclair ZX Spectrum t-shirt at the moment, and that's the first computer I owned in 1983. I'm programming it on an emulator these days, but actually that I don't consider that nostalgia in a negative sense. I'm very much enjoying programming that computer and learning assembly language. You've seen a couple of past videos maybe that I've put out on that. So I am riding the wave of the present moment, you know, when I'm doing that. But I think nostalgia can be troublesome too, especially when we insist on amassing huge parts of the past in a way that means we don't let go of anything. No. Riding the wave of the present is about letting go, not clinging to things, embracing change, and knowing that all the changes don't last, but they just give way to more changes. And the big massive one really has to be that when the universe does come to an end, never mind human beings, but when the universe itself comes to an end, there'll be another one. Otherwise, how did this one come to be? I know some people believe in God as an anthropomorphic entity, but that idea doesn't seem very rational to me. I do think there is a higher order of reality that's responsible for all this, but it seems to mind its own business. And I certainly don't conceptualize it as a god in any monotheistic sense. So our role seems to be just to pay attention to how things actually work in the universe and to flow with that arrangement and to trust it. I think that's what it amounts to trust it. I don't feel frustrated by not having some kind of ultimate answer, because I just trust that the universe is working exactly the way it's supposed to. The good and the bad parts of it are all part of the package. And the closest I can come to answering the meaning of life question is the understanding that it's not serious, that it's essentially just a form of play. And that satisfies me. That's enough for me. And I don't concern myself or feel frustrated by the mystery. I bask in the mystery. All right, Richard, take care.